And if they expect me to walk away from Luton with nothing, I'll make very sure there's nothing to walk away from.
Hello and welcome back to the Oak Road Hatter podcast. And after match week 2 of this Premier League campaign, Luton Town crawled out of the relegation spot without even playing. It's a bizarre start to the Premier League, but we are back with a bang. It is Chelsea away at Stamford Bridge. Of course, it's Stamford Bridge. It's a very, very exciting fixture, and one of those that is still difficult to really wrap our heads around. I'm here today with Jamie Castle and Kieran Robertson. Starting with you, Jamie. How are you getting on?
Yeah, pretty good. Felt a bit weird having no football this weekend, but I mean, a weekend off can't hurt after Germany away and Brighton away back to back. It was probably nice to get a bit of respite. But yeah, as you say, this Premier League lark's quite easy, right? I mean, don't play a game and we go up a place. Like, come on, it's not that hard.
I was saying the other day to one of my mates that supports City, we've actually had a better start to City because, you know, their expectation is to be top. The expectation that the Premier League has given us is to finish rock bottom, and we're doing 3 places better than that. So who are the real winners? Kieran, how about you? How are you getting on?
Yeah, not bad, mate. I mean, nice to have the weekend off. Turned 25 on Saturday, so thanks for all the wishes, everybody. Those that wish me happy birthday on Twitter. So yeah, all's good. Spirits are high. Nice recharge of the batteries with no football. Albeit it was nice to just I did watch the fixtures that were on this weekend, mainly so the ones yesterday. So it was nice to kick on, just sit back, relax, and just watch those actually and enjoy some Premier League football for a change. I think I said last week, I never really fussed about watching the games last season and season before, but now different kettle of fish. And obviously, of course, it was nice to end game week 2 outside the relegation zone. So if you wouldn't mind, lads, stop the count there and I'll be a happy man.
And it's just bizarre. I mentioned it at the start. It's just surreal that our next fixture is at Stamford Bridge. Of course, we've played them in the Cup a couple of times, and those in itself have been fantastic fixtures. But to say we are competing in the same division as Chelsea and actually take a little bit of confidence and a little bit of excitement into the fixture that we can actually get something out of it, that in itself is very, very different to what I've known being a Luton fan. That level of excitement that we can go to Chelsea and potentially give them a very good game, that is exciting in itself, isn't it?
I think the advantage as well, I thought the other day, is you think we've played them twice in the Cup, like you said, and both times, mainly so the home fixture, we didn't look out of place. And you think a lot of the players that have played in both those Cup games as well have stayed with the team, have stayed with the squad. So they're going to be well up for it again. And I think when it comes to surprises, we spoke about it in our season preview, there's a few times where, for example, you play a team that's in a lower league, right? And people think, oh, you stoop to their level almost. This is almost going to be one of those fixtures where it's the other way around, where we almost rise above because we want to prove a point. And as a result, we're going to be underestimated by Chelsea. I predicted it as my surprise fixture and where our first win's going to come from. And after watching them against West Ham yesterday, I am, if not more firmly, sticking with that now.
I wonder if Edwards has that little FM team talk shout available to him, sort of like they beat us last time out, but let's go and get revenge. Maybe he's got that little option on his dashboard pre-game. If he does, then Rob, please use that. But no, Bill, you're right. It's pretty surreal. What I'm doing this year is all the games at Luton are on Sky. I'm recording the game, so I went onto my little Sky Q box earlier. Went to Friday at 7 p.m. and clicked the record button, and it was just weird seeing live FNF Chelsea v Luton. It's just it's crazy, but yeah, it's I'm not sure it will fully sink in until we get sort of some points on the board and start climbing that table to maybe the lofty heights of mid-table. Who knows? And we are also only 1 point behind them, and have a game in hand, so we could beat them to go above them. So that'd be nice. Mate.
Only 6 points off the top as well. We're in that sort of territory of the season where we're talking that. And it's a game at the complete polar opposite of the financial spectrum. Chelsea having a squad close to £1 billion. Luton, of course, we know that our squad value is more than it probably is, given everything we've achieved so far, and the fact that our players are going to continue adapting to Premier League football, and subsequently value will be increased. But looking at some of the graphics that some of the bigger outlets have put out, it's quite interesting. It's quite staggering to see Chelsea's value close to £1 billion compared to ours, and it just goes to show, and we say this so often on these podcasts, fantastic recruitment and fantastic people in your club earn you the right to be in this kind of position. And that's exactly what it is again, isn't it, Jamie?
Yeah, and in these sort of games, you often see stats, something like, this team's sub player earns the same that a Luton squad earns in the year. But I just don't think a stat like that does it justice. Like, for Chelsea to spend £1 billion in 12 months, or a bit under 12 months, you can't have a stat that I guess expresses just how vast that gap is. So yeah, I mean, I don't think Luton will ever reach that spending this century, let alone in our lifetime, let alone in the next 5-10 years. So the fact that we're going up against a Chelsea side that have spent that much money on some that are brilliant players and probably will be world-class players or young players, but regardless, like, to even go to Stamford Bridge and be on a level footing with Chelsea with the money that they've spent, any sort of result is going to be massive. And yeah, it's just the fact that we're even going to talk in the next sort of 40 minutes or so about the fact that we actually could beat Chelsea, given that they spent that, is pretty ridiculous in itself. So yeah, like, you could rinse and repeat everything we've said about our recruitment over the last sort of 90 odd episodes, but yeah, the fact that we're even going into this game on a level footing is pretty crazy.
And it's very easy to get carried away with the potential of this game as a Luton fan, but before we get too carried away with ourselves, and I promise you, I'll give you both an opportunity to get carried away. Chelsea do have a lot of threats. I know a lot of their money hasn't been wisely spent, but they also have some very elite level players that can cause us problems, and they may not have shown it the sort of opening couple of games, especially in front of goal. They've played some good football without really penetrating. There's a lot of players within that squad that can cause us damage, and given time, given space, they will do that to us. For you, Jamie, who do you look at? Who have you seen so far from this season that will give us something to think about more than perhaps Luton fans might expect?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting because obviously system-wise, it's not too different. I think obviously they have one less man in midfield and one more up front in terms of their back three system. So it's not a complete matchup, but it's not too far off in terms of the back three against back three. From what I've seen so far, although I guess on paper he's a left wing back, but Ben Chilwell has been very, very high up. So Kabore and whoever we choose to play on the right of the back three, probably at this stage Anderson still, given we've not brought anyone in as of Monday night. That side of our defence is going to be tested again, as they were tested by Matoma at Brighton. So yeah, it's going to be tough. But again, what we've seen from Kabore away at Brighton, you have faith that he can handle the threat of Ben Chilwell. And then it's going to be that matchup really in terms of the front three that Chelsea put out against our back three. Can on the assumption it's Bale, Lockyer, Anderson again, can they cope with who's going to be Raheem Sterling, who is a European finalist and World Cup semi-finalist and multi-Premier League winner with Man City and been to Champions League sort of quarterfinals and semi-finals. So he's as esteemed a Premier League forward as you'll find at sort of in this league and in this country. So okay, it's not impressed too much in the Chelsea shirt. We all know what he can do for both club and country. Nicholas Jackson, who to an extent is a bit of an unknown entity, but I think from what he's shown in the first 2 games, he certainly can be a threat, and almost that unknown entity is to their advantage because, okay, you can watch videos and stuff, but he's not played in this country for too long. So there's an element of not knowing fully what he's about. And then given Chukwuemeka got injured, I'm not sure who that's going to be, a Mudryk or Madueke. I'm not sure who they're going to play on that left. But either way, that matchup with their front 3 and our back 3 is going to be massive. And I think you probably back Lockyer to maybe get the better of Jackson. But I guess it's just those wide forwards against our wide centre backs that are probably going to be the big question mark for me.
And Kieran, they've got a man in Mauricio Pochettino as manager who done incredible things with Spurs. He's got a very young squad at his disposal, and in my head that plays an advantage in what he can do with this Chelsea squad. I always thought it was going to take time with him. I always thought that there was going to have to be an element of patience, even though they are spending crazy sums of money. But what are your thoughts on Pochettino? Do you sort of echo what I feel in that it will take time, or do you think there's going to be a real difficulty in him getting a fine tune out the squad he's got at Chelsea?
I think the key thing with Chelsea at the moment, and I was actually having this discussion earlier with a work colleague, is at this moment in time, and this is why I had them as our first win, is they lack a lot of cohesion, or they lack cohesion, sorry. You noticed it against West Ham. You've brought in 3 midfielders who, in the nicest way possible, all speak a completely different language, who have never played together in their life and have just been thrown in the mix. Add in Caicedo, who again made his debut, brand new team, but again gave away the penalty. We won't hold that against him, but he didn't exactly get a chance to really show what he was about. Across the team, there's a lot of new faces, even in defence. Like, fine, you've got Thiago Silva, who's a mainstay, but you've got Dizazi, who's brand new, thrown straight in there. Robert Sanchez, new keeper, thrown straight in there. Gusto, new right back, thrown straight in. And even if you look up front, Nicholas Jackson, brand new, being heavily trusted, and he's 19, 20? He's very, very young. Sterling, who's playing on the right, didn't really think he was a right-sided player. Yeah, I always thought he was a left-sided player, but then Carney Chukwuemeka is probably a left-sided player as well. So Sterling's got to play in there somewhere. I think one change that would scare me a little bit is if Noni Madueke comes in. He's a right-sided player, left-footed, can cut in. Obviously, watching him at PSV, unbelievably direct, rapid, can change pace so quickly. And he's really good at sort of playing that inside forward role where he'll get across the goal, byline crosses come in. He loves a tap in, but he also loves a banger from 20 yards. He's got both in his locker. I think that would be the one change if they make, based off of with Carney being injured, that would scare me a little bit. But I think the one thing that Luton have always had, no matter how many new faces come in, we've always had that same level of cohesion, or we've had this same expectation of cohesion. And I think that is going to be the biggest benefit is, yes, we've added new faces, but we've not made radical overhauls to our squad or to our style of play. So there isn't going to be that. You're not going to have 8 or 9 faces in this team that are going to go, what are we doing? And if you have 8 or 9 people who are sat on this team going, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Like Thiago Silva can only guide that team so much. But when they're all so young and they're all new and they're all trying to play this new system that Pochettino's come in with new players and a new manager, like you said, it just takes time. And we've had that time in the Championship. We've got promoted and we've not changed as a club and as a team, which is going to be our benefit going into Friday. Is, yes, we've got new faces in Anderson, Kabore, Chong, but every single man you saw at Brighton on the Saturday before, every single man knew their job. They knew exactly what they should have been doing, minus a few mistakes here or there. But is that because of the occasion? Maybe. But for the most part, we're going to know what we're doing. We're going to know what the job is. each player is going to know their individual role and what they need to do for the team. And it might be naive of me to say beforehand, I don't think Chelsea have that advantage.
I think what comes with a lot of new players, and I really like Poch, and I think if he can get past the first 12 months, I think he'll be absolutely fine, and he will excel, and he'll be a really exciting Chelsea side. But I think what comes with that higher turnover of players is inconsistency rather than sort of bedding in. I think that they will put in a fantastic performance one week and a bit of a subpar performance the next. I think in the Liverpool game, for the most part, they were the better side. Go to West Ham, they were awful. They could play against us, be awesome, beat us 4-5-0, and the week after that they could put in another shit performance again. So I think that for me is what gives me the hope, is that hopefully that their inconsistencies continue and they play poor against us, and then from game 4 onwards they go on to excel. But yeah, I think we just hope that they show a bit more inconsistency.
Let me now flip that previous question. Luton shown against Brighton that we can break with pace. Kabore and Giles were both very, very influential in that. Colton Morris gave both centre-backs a real difficult time. Steve Chong looked very, very progressive and capable on the ball. He did not lose possession once, I can't remember. And Nakamba for the most part was solid enough. Defensively, we won our duels. What kind of battles or what kind of individuals from a Luton perspective do you think is key for Luton getting a positive result here?
I think for me it's the wide areas. I think in terms of their back three, I think okay, you've got 38-year-old Thiago Silva, but for his age, he's fairly mobile. He's not exactly slow. And then the wide centre halves, you've got on the left, you've got Colwell, and on the right, you've got Disasi from Monaco, and they're both very mobile centre halves. And I think if it's a man v man matchup, I think their mobility will do them well. I think it's if we can catch them off guard, if we can get behind Chilwell and Gusto and catch their wing backs high up and overload them, say 5v3, if we've got Doughty or Giles on the left, if we've got Kabore on the right, and if we've got one of our eights and our two forwards against their back three, that's where I think we're gonna overload them. It's just we need to soak up a lot of pressure, which they'll put us under a lot of pressure, and just hope that in transition we can catch their wing backs high at the pitch and their midfield high at the pitch and get them on the counter. I think in terms of man to man, they obviously are better than us man to man over most of the pitch. I think it's more going to be how can we flip that battle in our favour by outmanning them and overloading them. I think if we man for man them all over the pitch, I think we'll struggle. It's how can we create 2v1s or 3v2s. I think there's no one matchup. I think that's gonna give us an advantage.
And that was a really exciting element of the Brighton game, especially in that first half when we broke out with pace. We had the balls in central area. Had the ball in central areas, and somebody like Chong played the ball out wide quickly. Kabore, Giles were both on their bike. They knew their position and they knew their role within the team, which I thought would take a while for them to grow accustomed to. It didn't really. I'm really impressed by that. Maybe the quality in the final third, particularly on Kabore's side, could have been better. But ultimately, we got ourselves into really, really good positions on the opening day against a very, very good Brighton team who it's quite therapeutic that they also beat Wolves 4-1. It's sort of eased that, even though it wasn't a bad scoreline losing 4-1, it's eased that Premier League-wide remark that Luton are going down because we lost the opening game against a very good Brighton side. But back to that point, the fact that we got into those positions, we created a fair few openings on the opening day when there was a lot of new fresh faces. That has to be a positive going into this next game where we've had 2 weeks to prepare for. It is, again, very exciting.
Yeah, and they certainly showed their defensive frailties against West Ham, right? I think if you're a better man, you think you certainly back us to score at the Bridge on Friday. It's just whether we can stay defensively solid for long enough to be able to score at the right time. I think scoring against Brighton was to make it 2-1, and it still makes it difficult to come back from that. But if we can score either 0-0 or 1-0 down to sort of keep us in the game or get us back in the game or get us ahead, that's going to be the important thing. Is can we stay solid? I think if you offered me 0-0 at half time now, I'd bite your hand off, right? So can we just stay in the game for long enough? Is going to be the important thing.
Let us go on to some score predictions. Jamie, Mr. Optimistic, hit us with your one first.
I think part of me is a little bit not scared. I think scared is not the wrong word, because I'm not scared at all this season. I'm just going to enjoy it. But I think where I'm a bit hesitant is because they were on the back of a fairly big loss, not big in terms of numbers, but just big in terms of reputationally for the side, losing at West Ham 3-1. So I think they're going to come out big guns, and I think they're going to beat us. I'm going to go 2-0 Chelsea.
Oh shit, we're all in the mud then. Jamie Castle's gone for a loss. Kieran, can you bring the mood back up?
Oh, do you know what? Normally it goes the other way around. I'm the one that's the most pessimistic, and Jamie has to recover. So fuck you, Jamie. And I'm going to change the script a little bit. I've seen it go around Twitter all the time, and I'm going to plant the seed already. We are going to win 2-1. And a certain Scouse man, if he comes off the bench, will score the winner. If he does not, however, because I need a alternative outcome, I'm going to slap that pedestal on the top of Morris penalty for a winner.
Ain't nobody like Ross Barkley.
Ain't nobody like Ross Barkley.
Yeah, I love the role reversal, but I'm gonna go on the fence, which I still think is probably a little bit on the optimistic side of things. I'm gonna go 1-1, but I think we're gonna recover it later on, and I think a certain Luke Berry's gonna come on.
David Berry, the Berry Park Frank Lampard getting the winner at Stamford Bridge or the equaliser at Stamford Bridge. Could you imagine?
Yeah, it's going to be. We've got it all there. We've got a win. We've got a draw. We've got a loss. There'll be one winner at least.
In other words, we ain't got a clue, lads.
That's me trying to dress it up. But yeah, Jamie's put it bluntly as ever. We'll go into a quick break now. When we're back, we will head on to the free polls of the week and check up on the transfer market. And we are back for the second part of this episode. We're going on to the free polls, and then we'll head on to the latest on the transfer front. Let's start with poll 1, start at the very start, and that is about a certain Ross Barkley. We've mentioned him already. Of course, signed a couple of weeks ago, getting up to fitness, getting up to the tactical demands that will be placed on him by Rob Edwards. We put out, should he start at Chelsea on Friday evening? And I'll come to you two first before I reveal the results of the poll. Jamie, would you start Ross Barkley? I guess there's an element of uncertainty from our perspective as to whether he will be ready, fitness-wise, tactically, if he's ready for a game like this. Is it as well the kind of game you'd want him to start in? Where's your head at in relation to this question?
So I've got two schools of thought. The first one is, if people think he's going to score a winner in the 90th minute, then that means he doesn't start. I'm not sure he can play 95 minutes. So I think, fitness is a big thing. So it's whether you want him to play from the start or play to the end. Which leads me on to my second school of thought, where I think I probably would start him. I think, going back from my point on the first half, I think we need to stay in this game for as long as possible. Now, for me, that probably would mean dropping Chong from the start. I think I want to shore up the midfield a little bit. I would probably start with a midfield three of Nakamba, Pelly and Barkley. gives us that little bit more of weight in midfield, that bit more sort of defensive structure in midfield. I think Barkley's less of a defensive liability than Chong, and I think that's harsh on Chong. He's not a liability, but just more so than Barkley. And then I would like to see Chong in the last half hour, 20 minutes, if we're still in the game. So yeah, for me, I probably would start Barkley and wouldn't start Chong personally.
Kieran, are you on the same lines as that?
I'm gonna sit on the side of caution, and bearing in mind that Ross hasn't really had a pre-season. Like, we signed him after our last friendly, and one would assume that unless he's been training with us for a few weeks beforehand, there was a rumour of a Premier League player training with us before he signed. So let's just say that wasn't him. He hasn't had a pre-season, so for him to be fit, there's a lot of question marks still. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the squad, but if he's used, final 20 at best. I think at this point, it's annoying because, like, in an ideal world, like, Jamie's scenario is pitch perfect for a game like Chelsea away. And I agree with the comments on Chong as well. But I think if you were to take that scenario and say that, like, hypothetically, that's what Rob Edwards is going to go with, I think he would rather start with a Berry or a Campbell doing that same job, and then bring Barkley on late or bring Chong on later doors. Or he'll go with the same team as he did at Brighton, and Barkley, if he features, last 20 at best, I think, this week.
It is difficult, and you probably understand it always. If he is to start, I understand that. If he was to be benched, I'd understand that. Probably if he was missing from the squad, to a certain extent, I'd understand that still. If he is still trying to get up to full fitness, if he's still learning his position in a Edwards system, I get that. We've still got very, very capable players that can come off the bench and make an impact. I would be leaning towards no, but on the bench. And that scenario that Jamie mentioned and Kieran alluded to as well, where he comes on with a portion of the game still to go. If the game's tight and we need a match winner, or if we need somebody to get us back in the game, Ross Barkley screams a player that can do that. And especially with it being a former club, there's that extra motivation within that. So yeah, I'd go for no. The results of the poll were 68% at yes and 32% at no. I think a lot of that will come from the excitement of having Ross Barkley at our football club. If you're at Brighton, you would have heard the songs. If you follow our socials, you'll also have heard the song. There is a lot of excitement about Ross Barkley being at our club, and I do think he's going to deliver. I think it will take time. Naturally, it will take time. But ultimately, he will deliver the goods. That is for sure.
I think what sums up the excitement for Ross Barkley, I can't remember who it was, but I saw a tweet from a relatively older Luton fan, and he said something like, "It was the first player in my lifetime that Luton Town have signed that my wife knew about." So I think that shows just where we've got to, that we're signing players that people's missuses have learnt of or know of or whatever. So yeah, I think that sums up the excitement for me.
Yes, I've had very similar, but it's all been people like, "Oh, you've signed," no, like people I work with or like members at work and stuff, and they're sort of like, "Oh, you haven't really signed anyone, have you?" And I was like, "Well, we have. We've signed about 6 players." And they were like, "Yeah, but until Ross Barkley, you hadn't really signed anyone, had you? Like, no one I'd heard of." And I was like, "Yeah, because you're a Liverpool fan and you're stuck in a Premier League bubble, mate. To be honest, that's probably why." It's very naive when people say that, I think.
Yeah, in a Premier League fan's ideal world, it'll be whoever spends the most money. It'll be Chelsea running away with it. But hopefully, we prove everybody wrong. We'll go on
to get Conference League.
We'll go on to poll 2, and that addresses the goalkeeping department. Who is your goalkeeper for Chelsea away, TK or TK? I'll go through the results first on this one. Thomas Kaminski was at 88%, and Tim Krul was at 12%. And whilst I agree, I do think Thomas Kaminski should start. I thought I'd see a more even split here. I didn't think it would go as one way as it did. Kaminski, the clear winner there. Jamie, Were you the same? Did you think Thomas Kaminski was going to win that so clearly?
Yeah, I disagree with you, Bill. I think it was as clear as that. I think he's number one. I think as despite all the experience that Tim Krul has, I think he comes in as number two. I think Kaminski has shown in the 2 games that I've seen of him, he's shown that he is definitely number one standard, and he's had that time with the defence already. And I think until he proves us otherwise, he has that number one shirt. And I don't think you chop and change for no reason. I think, like I said, until Kaminski makes a mistake, it's Kaminski in the league and Krul in the cups. And yeah, I'm not surprised that the poll was that clear. I think for me, it's pretty clear cut.
Do you use the same, Kieran? Do you think Kaminski should be number one? Looking at this game individually and probably extending that to the rest of the season. I know a lot will have to play out. A lot will probably be made of what happens with Kaminski and how he performs over the next few games. But do you see it as Kaminski is still the number one?
Well, I'm glad that TK won the poll, first of all. I'd like to say well done to TK. Secondly, though, more seriously, yeah, Kaminski's more than earned his shirt, let's be fair. Without him the other day, that could have easily been 8 or 9-1. I said that last week on the pod. His shot stopping ability is very, very good. And I'm sure we'll be put more to the test again on Friday night, and proves how good he is, and proves he earns a shirt again. I said last week, and I'll echo my thoughts in case people didn't listen in last week, is there will come a time where his shot stopping will prove to be the 3 points for us. And all these saves won't be for nothing. Like against Brighton, he made 20 odd saves, still conceded 4. There's going to come a game or a few games this season where he makes the same amount of saves, but nothing gets past the boy. And I think he's fully capable of having one of those performances on Friday night where even if he concedes 1, he isn't going to concede 4 again. And he's just going to have another good performance. And touch wood, it's going to be the one that gets us 3 points.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. We'll go on to the third poll, and this we tie in with our first bit of sort of transfer news of the evening, and it's probably best to lead with the transfer news, which is our centre-back search. Japhet Tanganga is a name that's been rumoured with Luton Town again. Us and Inter Milan are competing for his signature, not something I expected to be saying at all, even though becoming a fan of a Premier League club has come with all these new experiences. I didn't think we'd be competing with the Champions League finalists for a player, but that's all the excitement of being part of the world's best division. The other player, the other centre-back that we are being rumoured, being linked with at this moment is Axel Tuanzebe, a player that's also played in Serie A. Well, not also played in Serie A, has played in the Serie A with Napoli, played a fair bit for Manchester United. He also won promotion with Aston Villa from the Championship, spent some time with Stoke City last season. 2 players of a good age, of a good athletic profile. We wanted to know from our poll, who would you prefer to sign? And we had Axel Tuanzebe as an option. We had Japhet Tanganga as an option. We had both as an option, and we had none. Before we get into it, Kieran, where's your head at with this one?
I mean, in an ideal world, you sign both. However, let's take away that option just for this and say if I had signed one, it's got to be Tanganga. I think based on what we know about both players and where they've been the last couple of years, Tanganga's been in and out of the first team at Spurs, and he's been trusted by Mourinho, and he's been wanted by Inter Milan. If that interest doesn't come out of nowhere, Tuanzebe at Stoke last year, but I can't say he set the world on fire. Stoke fans couldn't feel free to tell me otherwise, but from the ones I've seen on Twitter, they weren't aroused by him, let's be honest. Left on a free from United, they clearly didn't see much from him. However, he has shown promise, so there's that sort of potential there. I mean, like you said, they're both of a good age, and think about it, Tuanzebe most pocketed Mbappe one time. So if you can pocket Mbappe, Well, you could probably pocket anyone in this league, let's be fair. But I think Tanganga, in terms of a higher ceiling, in terms of further sell-on value, if that was to ever become a thing, in terms of what they would add to the team at this current moment, if I could only have one, Japhet Tanganga is the one.
Jamie, do you agree?
This is probably one of the toughest poll questions we've got actually, and I think it comes down to circumstance for me, and I'm not sure I can give you a clear as day answer. I think on the basis that Tanganga is going to be a loan and that Tuanzebe is a permanent on a free, it all comes down to, is there anyone else that we want to use that second loan slot on? If the answer is no, then I think from a player perspective, I would rather Tanganga. I think he has less question marks about him. I think Tuanzebe's injury problems are a slight concern, so that's a big question mark. And I think Tanganga in the next 12 months will give us more than Tuanzebe does. However, I think because it takes up our second loan slot, I think it really has to be it depends. I think if we can use that second slot on a Cameron Archer, let's say, and get Tuanzebe instead, that's probably a better mix. So for me, it's purely a squad balance play, a squad construction play, whether we can use that loan slot more wisely. So it's a bit of a fence-sitting answer. I think either way, I'll be delighted with the signing. I think it definitely is an upgrade based on what we've got, but both will add to us. Tuanzebe would be a permanent and therefore give us chance to make some money on him if he was to come in and prove his worth. So yeah, let's wait and see. Let's see if there's another player that we can use that loan slot on first. If not, then happy with Tanganga. If there is, and happy with Tuanzebe. And that's a fairly Billy Mully fence-sitting answer, so I apologise.
That's the best place to be, fencing. Let's go through the results of that particular poll, and Axel Tuanzebe stands at 25%, Japhet Tanganga at 43%, both was 29%, and none was 3%. So Tanganga, the clear winner, then both, then Tuanzebe, then none.
I don't think both is the answer, by the way. Obviously, we'll go on to yours, but I don't think both is the answer. I think that's just too many. I think if you get both, then that completely shuts out Burke and or Osho, well, at least one of them. And obviously, there's question marks on injuries with those two and that, but I think they deserve a chance to get to have the chance to get back fit and prove their worth. So I think signing both just shuts them out completely. So I think it's got to be one or the other is my perspective. But obviously, yeah, it'd be good to hear your thoughts, Bill.
Yeah, similar. It has to be one or the other. I think looking at the squad as it is and where we've been rumoured to have interest in from a defensive perspective, we are looking to recruit for that right-sided centre-back spot. I think, in my eyes, Lockyer and Anderson will be competing for that central spot. I said that last time. I think both of them lack an element of Premier League level mobility. Both very good, very commanding, dominant in their duels. But I think as we've seen with Sonny Bradley, when you play on the wider side of a back three, I think you have to have a certain level of mobility, and that's why I think Anderson might be the answer at the moment. But once we finalise our defensive line, it has to be somebody that has a higher level of mobility. So I think both these players are somewhat of an answer to that. I think Tanganga, like you, slightly ahead in my personal pecking order. I think in terms of the athleticism he brings, I think as well the injury record has to come into play, because if we're talking about a right-sided defender, do we really want to get Tuanzebe, who is going to be as, I don't want to say unreliable, but there's a question mark to his fitness levels, like Burke and Osho. So we'll have three players competing for that one spot who all suffer with injury issues quite frequently, and that possibility scares me a little bit. So in my eyes, Tanganga would be the one. Loan with option to buy would be ideal if it's something that is feasible, and if we are able to beat Inter Milan to it, which No, I said it was crazy before. It still is absolutely bizarre. Yeah, Tanganga would be my shout for this one, and ultimately I'd be happy with either. I think both of them improve our backline, but Tanganga would be the ideal shout, I think.
Just also, by the way, just to finish this point off with a funny question, I'd love to know who the 3% are that said both. No, said none. Sorry, that said neither of them. I would love to get that 3% in a room and say, who instead? That's a good question. I would love the answer to, because one, it'll either surprise me and I'll go, oh, didn't consider that, or two, it'll be I don't know. I don't want to spend any money on a player. I'll be intrigued to see.
Yeah. Looking at it, that 3%, there was 161 votes, so I'd be about 5 people. That'd be right.
I'd get those 5 people on a surprise pod midweek. I'll get them on my preview.
We'll go on to the little bit of other transfer news. Cameron Archer is a player that has been linked fairly loosely. It's not too concrete, but he's a player that I'm sure is on several clubs, and I'm talking double figures. He'd be on the radar of lots of clubs this summer. Sheffield United are also interested and are rumoured to want to buy him. And that's, again, reportedly what Aston Villa want to do if they do sanction his departure, a permanent departure. So, Jamie, coming to you, do you think that's something? Do you think this is one that we can wave goodbye to before it's really even taken flight, or do you think there's something in that, something to suggest that Archer is a player that would fit what we're trying to do, but also a player that could progress with us?
Yeah, as a player, he's someone I'd love. I think he showed last season for Middlesbrough what he's capable of. He showed that for the 21s for England in the Euros in the summer as well. I think, okay, do we need him in terms of numbers? Probably not. But I think when the option to have someone as good as him comes available, I think you've got to grab it with both hands, and that may see someone like a Woodrow move on or on loan or whatever. But yeah, I think he would come in, and I think he would partner Morris from the off, which is harsh on Eli, but I think that's just a no-brainer. I think Morris and Archer as a front two is pretty scary, and I don't think you have many promoted sides that have a front two as good as that in the first few months. So it comes down to whether it's feasible, and I think if Villa are fairly stubborn and want a permanent sale only, I think they're looking for 20 million, and that's us priced out straight away. So that's a sorry, no can do. But who knows? Our relationship with Villa seems to be fairly good. They let us have Bree, they let us have Nakamba. So who knows? We may have some good links at Villa, and they may, if a loan option is available, they may send them our way. And if we can get a loan option or an obligation on survival in that, then that would be even better.
And Kieran, Archer's price, likely his outright price would likely be a high one. How high would you go? That's a very difficult question without knowing Luton's budget, without knowing exactly what we've paid so far, without really knowing Aston Villa's true intentions. But where would your sort of upper limit be for a player like Archer?
I think the figures that I've sort of seen at the moment is the main rumour was the 10 million up front, with then the potential buyback clause, looking at around 30 million for a buyback clause. If we were going to do that, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit lower, maybe like a 20 to 25 if we did that buyback. In terms of an outright fee, I genuinely couldn't see us going higher than 10. Like 20 million from Sheffield United, a silly money. Like we are not going to spend 20 million on one player. Like our record signing sits at 5 million right now, and I know that this is coming from the same guy as in me who said at the start of the season, "Lol, be prepared to spend money. Like we're not going to be getting everyone for free anymore. Like we are going to spend 5, 6, 7 million on players, but to go 10 and above on one player, I can't see it happening. Especially when, like Jamie said, it's one of those things where, do we outright need another striker? No, we're in a position where we can trust the current crop that we've got. However, a good point that Jamie made right near the start of the window, basically when I joined the pod, was sort of this. I think we were off on about Alex Scott at the time, but the point kind of stands now is like, would a club take X amount a month ago? The answer would have been no. But then you get towards the end of the window, and then from Villa's perspective, they go, we've got this player in Cameron Archer who we want to develop and play well. At the moment, he isn't going to get a sniff. You look at Villa's attackers, he's not getting in. Like, yeah, he's getting on the bench, but do they need him either? Not right now. But in 2 seasons, if Ollie Watkins moves on, say he goes to an Arsenal, someone like that, then yeah, they probably do want him back. But equally, they'll want to send him to a club who are actually going to play him and who are actually going to treat him right. And I'm not going to sit here and slander Sheffield United and say, you treat him like shit, because they desperately need a striker. But I think he is a massive asset to us, and we will try our hardest at that sort of 10 million mark, and we'll offer them some sort of incentive in a buyback or future clauses and whatever else. At the moment, I'd be hard pressed to see him come to Luton, though.
Yeah, there's always 2 parts to that question, sort of, Billy, in terms of like how far do you go. I think the part 1 is how much is he worth. I think, yeah, he's definitely worth 15-20 million. Part 2 is how much do we spend, and it's like, no, we can't spend 15-20 million. So it's just where's that inflection point that meets between how much we can spend and how much do we really want to sell for. So I really can't see us getting him on a permanent this window. I'm 99.9% certain that we will not see Archer in a Luton shirt on a permanent basis before the end of August. It's just whether, as Kevin says, whether Villa want to loan him out. And I think as much as he would start at Sheffield United, absolutely, Sheffield United are desperate. So do they get nervous, get a bit shaky, don't hold out to hopefully get him on loan from Villa and get someone else in on a permanent? I think we saw a link with Origi to Sheffield United today. So they might get nervous, think, shit, we really need someone in ASAP. So they go for an Origi instead, and then at the end of August, they think, actually, no, we're actually fine for a striker now. So then they move on from Archer, which then leaves the door open for us. Just shows how things in football can change that so quickly, and how dynamic a window is, and how shortlists develop and change almost overnight based on what other clubs do, which makes it so fascinating, A, for us to watch, and B, for us to talk about on a podcast like this. So it's one that I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. But yeah, I think in terms of Luton and Archer, it's a loan only.
And there's this potential, isn't there, for deadline day to accelerate in this. We think things are moving very quickly at the moment. Get to deadline day or a couple of days before deadline day, and just see how quickly that transfer market moves. And we've never been involved with it as a Premier League club, so I think we're potentially in for a real eye opener. But at the same time, you hope to avoid the madness that is deadline day, because you could be roped into paying inflated prices. I know that's not the Luton way, but if there is a evident need to recruit in a certain position, we might have to join those list of clubs that still need to conduct business on deadline day, and what a manic 24 hours that could be.
Yeah. And I guess it leads us finally on this point, Bill. So it leads us back to what we said at the start of the window on one of the pods, where I think Gary Sweet said at one of the sort of the fixture release meetings or fan meetups, where we are in a position where we will sign players at the right time when it suits us. And I think the squad, bar that right centre half position, I think we're fine. I think we're not desperate for anyone. So we've earned the right. We've worked hard enough to be patient and act based on how that window develops. We probably have a bit of spare change that we can spend if the right player comes up, and we can jump at, again, a right loan signing or otherwise. So I think, again, the way the club is run and the way the recruitment is done, I think we've put ourselves in a really good position where we don't have to overstretch ourselves based on what we've done so far. And I think the squad overall, in general, is in a good position. And I think we're currently at a 7 out of 10 window, and it could rapidly become an 8 or 9 out of 10 window based on what we're doing in the last few weeks.
And we'll wrap it up there. A big thank you to everyone watching or listening today. It's rapidly approaching that deadline day that we've just been speaking about, and that is of course going to be interesting when we get to speak about what happens. We're also planning a couple of little bits on deadline day, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled on that. Of course, check our socials. We hammer on about it every week, but type in Oak Road Hatter to anywhere, absolutely anywhere, any of your socials, I'm sure we'll be there. Of course, Instagram is the one exception where we are Oak Road Hatter Pod. Until next week, it is goodbye from us.